Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ayo and I'm based in Lagos, Nigeria. I hope you are all fine and doing great. On today's tutorial, I will be stitching up the bow-flounce skirt pattern pieces which I drafted in a previous tutorial. The link will be in the description box below. On this channel, I upload DIYs, pattern drafting and sewing tutorials. If you haven't subscribed yet, kindly do so. And remember to turn on the notification bell so that you get notified whenever I upload new videos. So without wasting much time, let's jump straight into the tutorial. Thank you. So these are the skirt pieces which I have already cut out of my African print fabric. This small rectangular piece is the band and its dimension is 17 centimeters by 19 centimeters. This is the front yoke of the skirt. I cut two pieces of this on fold. I have already interfaced both pieces. This is the back yoke of the skirt. I cut 4 pieces of this and I've also already interfaced the 4 pieces. This was not cut on fold. This is the back piece of the skirt. I have cut out the back vent from the pattern, and I will use it as a template to cut out the vents of the left back lining. This is the front skirt pieces. I cut the facing on the green complementary Ankara print. I cut out half an inch from the lower part of the green facing fabric. This is the larger front skirt piece. I divided the pattern into 2 after cutting out the main skirt piece. Then I used the pattern pieces to cut out the facing and the lining. This is the facing and this is the lining. I added half an inch or 1.5 centimeters seam allowance to both the lining and the facing. I will also cut out half an inch or 1.5 centimeters from the lower parts. I do this for all the lining and the facing pieces. This is the vent that I cut out from the back pattern. I will now use it as a template to cut out the vent on the back lining piece. These are the back pieces. I will now attach the yoke pieces to the main fabric and also to the lining fabrics. I will place the pieces like this. Right sides will be together. Right sides will be together, and I will stitch at about 1.5 centimeters or half an inch seam allowance. I will do this for all the pieces, for both the lining piece and the main fabric pieces. So now I have attached the yoke to the main back pieces. I've also overlocked them. So now I will stitch the flounce facing and the lining pieces together. I place the pieces like this. Right sides will be together. and I will stitch at about half an inch or 1.5 centimeters seam allowance. Once I've done that, I will now stick the flounce facing to the main skirt piece. I will place them right sides together. Right sides will be together. So now I'm assuming that I've already attached the lining to the facing. So I'll place the lining like this. So I will stitch both pieces together in this direction. I stitch from this point down to the hem of the skirt. I will also do the same for the other piece. For the other pieces, for the facing and the other skirt front piece, I will stitch in this direction like this. Right sides will also be together. I will stitch up to this point. But before doing that, that is before stitching the facing to the main skirt pieces, I will hand baste or hand tack half an inch or 1.5 centimeters towards the wrong side of the lining and the facing. Just like this. I will use my needle and thread to do this. So now I've done that. So now the facing has been stitched to the two front pieces. I stitched in this direction. I stitched this other piece also in this direction. I now place the two front pieces together like this. I will flip over the flounce like so. I will also fold the extension so as to reveal the cutout rectangle. I will measure the cutout rectangle and make sure it is up to 7 centimeters. Remember that the rectangle was 7 centimeters long on the skirt pattern. So once I've done that, I will take it to my sewing machine and I will stitch it in place for about 5 centimeters to 2 inches. I will do the stitching like this. I won't stitch all the way through. I only stitch about 2 inches or 5 centimeters. I will also fold the band and stitch it in place. I will turn it to the right side and iron. So now I have partially stitched the two front pieces together. This is the piece I will use to hold the bow in place. I have stitched and pressed it, and I've also ironed it into two, folded it into two. This is the center line. I will place the center line on the cutout rectangle like this. I will stick it in place on my sewing machine. I will now flip over the two flounce extensions like this. I will turn it to the other side and I will stick very close to the edge of the pieces. So now I've done that. This is the piece that will hold the bow in place. I've secured it on the cutout rectangle. I've also stitched the two flounce extensions together. I did not stick the cutout rectangle to the end, as you can see. I left about 1/2 inch opening on both sides. I will now stick the band to the opening like this. Note that I will only secure the band to the main skirt piece. It won't be stick to the lining or the facing piece. I will stick it like this. So now I have stick the band in place. As you can see, the band is sticked only to the main skirt piece. The facing is not included in the stitching. This is very important because I need the facing and the main skirt pieces to be separate, as I'm still going to attach the yokes to both the main skirt and the facing. So now it is time to attach the yoke to the skirt and also to the lining. I will place the yoke on the skirt like this. Right sides will be together. And I will take it to my sewing machine and stitch it in place. I will do the same also for the lining. So now this has been done. I've attached the yoke to both the main fabric and the lining, and I've also overlocked. See this little hole here? I will leave it like that as it is on the wrong side of my skirt, and also because it has been covered on the right side of the skirt by the band. So it's now time to fix this zip to the back of my skirt. First, I will mark out 7 inches for the zip. The opening for the zip can be between 7 to 8 inches. I'm using 7 inches for mine. Then I will measure 3 centimeters zip allowance. I will stitch from here to here. So I have fixed the zip. On the wrong side, I have pressed open the seam allowance. I also snip into the corner so that the seam allowance will lie flat. I will do the same for the lining. I will measure out the zip allowance, the length of the zip, which is 7 inches. Now we measure out the 3 centimeters zip allowance. I stitch together, so I've done that. So I've pressed the zip allowance to the wrong side. I also snip into the corner so that the seam allowance will lie flat. Note that the wrong sides of the back skirt pieces are now facing each other, both the lining and the main fabric. So I will lift up the left lining like this, the right lining like this. I will now take it to my sewing machine and stitch it in place. I will stick the vent pieces together at about half an inch or 1.5 centimeters seam allowance. I will also lift up the left lining piece like this. I've already snipped into the corners for easy sewing. I will take it to my sewing machine and stick the vent pieces together at half an inch seam allowance. So now I've done that, I need to close this opening. I need to close this opening. I will flip over the lining so that I can see the wrong side of my skirt. I will now stitch the opening together like this. I take it to my sewing machine to do this. I use about half an inch or 1.5 centimeters seam allowance for the sewing. So now that I've done that, the next thing to do is to close the yoke of the skirt at the top. To do this, I will flip over the lining like this. Check the right sides are now together. I will now take it to my sewing machine and stitch it in place. I will do this for the other side and also for the front skirt. I use half an inch sewing allowance. So now I've closed the yoke at the top for both the front and the back pieces. After sewing, I notched the seam allowance and I also understitched the seam allowances in place. So now I will fix the lining to the main skirt at the zipper area. I will do this with my needle and thread using invisible hand stitching method. So now that I've done that, it's now time to attach the front and the back skirt pieces together at the side seam. I place the two pieces together like this. Right sides will be together. I'll make sure that the seam lines of the front and the back yokes match or tally with each other. I will stitch from the hem of the skirt to the hem of the lining. I will use 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch seam allowance that was added to the skirt pattern. I use this for the stitching. I will remove some of the basting stitches at the hem of the lining. I will remove some of the basting stitches like this so that I can stitch all the way through. So now that has been done, the next thing to do is to hem the lining of the skirt. I will hem the lining of the skirt. I will do this on my sewing machine. Remember to remove the basting thread after stitching the hem of the lining. As for the outer fabric, I will use a needle and thread to do invisible hand stitching to the hem of the skirt. I will now flip over the flounce like this. I will stitch all the way to the hem. You can leave some of the parts of yours open if you want to have some slit at the front. So I've done that. I used hand stitching to secure the bow in place. This is the back of the skirt. So this is the look of the skirt on me, and this is the look of his dress on the dress form. So that's it, we are done. Do not forget to like, share and subscribe to my YouTube channel. See you in my next video. Bye and thank you for watching.